Welcome to my review for the 2012 horror anthology film VHS. I've not done an anthology review for the longest time. In fact, I think you'd have to go back to the very start of my channel when I did All Hallows Eve to find another one. I think I did its sequel as well. The reason why I'm coming to this now is because I just got done watching the VHS 94 revival on Shudder, and it's really put me in the mood to get back into this series, to go back to the beginning and do a bunch of reviews. There are 5 films in this series now, if you include the non-anthology spin-off. I'm hoping to eventually go through them all. Now, I've been sort of racking my brains as to how best to go about reviewing a film like this, which is made up of several stories. I think ultimately what I'm just going to do is talk about each of the stories in turn, in the order that you see them in the film, and then I'll finish with my conclusion. But first I want to start by talking about the wraparound segment, or the framing device as I've also heard it called. Neither term is particularly satisfying to me, although I think of the two I do prefer wraparound. If you've got any better ones, by all means let me know in the comments. A wraparound segment is essentially another story. It's just that it's structured a little differently usually, because we have to keep coming back to it in between each of the other stories, whereas the other stories are just done in one go. But yeah, we will lead with that today. So yeah, Tape 56 is the name of our wraparound. It was directed by Adam Wingard, who went on to do the pretty decent third film in the Blair Witch franchise, but sadly what he's done here is absolutely awful. This is probably the worst wraparound segment I have ever seen in any horror anthology. But luckily it's all up after this point. We are getting our biggest negative out of the way straight away today. So this story begins with a group of arseholes driving around. I'm just going to call them the arseholes, by the way, all the way through this. I don't think they are a gang who actually have a name. So yeah, I'm going to call them the arseholes. So the arseholes are driving around being arseholes. They're kicking the crap out of derelict houses and assaulting women in the streets. It turns out they're not doing this completely randomly. They're making illegal porn tapes to sell online or something. But one night their leader announces to them that they're going to be doing something different this one night. Somebody has offered to pay them some money if they break into a guy's house and steal a particular VHS tape. So they go and do this. They break into this guy's house. They find him dead in an armchair, and all these cassette tapes lined up next to these monitors. And so the arseholes decide to play these tapes one by one, and on each of these tapes are the stories that we watch for the rest of the movie. So basically we watch most of VHS through the eyes of the arseholes. And occasionally, after each of the stories, we will come back to the arseholes to catch up with them. But honestly, this whole story, if you could even call it that, is just a complete mess. I've seen VHS about 3 or 4 times. I can't even remember how this particular segment is resolved. I'm not sure it actually does get resolved. And the movie seems to know that it's crap, because the segments of Tape 56 seem to get smaller and smaller as the movie goes on, and we don't even finish with the wraparound. Most horror anthologies start with the wraparound and then finish with the wraparound, but not this film. It actually finishes with the 5th story. The last we see of the wraparound is between the 4th and the 5th story, so I vaguely remember something to do with a zombie. A couple of dead bodies are stumbled across at various points. Some of the characters go into the cellar. It's just all over the place. And like I said, I'm not even sure it gets resolved. I only watched this just the other night, like I said, for about the 3rd or the 4th time. It's not very good. So let's get into the proper stories. This is probably the most famous of all the VHS segments. Indeed, it was remade into the spin-off Siren. It was directed by David Bruckner, who went on to do the excellent film The Night House. Amateur Night is about a group of 3 guys who go out on the town trying to pull... They've booked a motel room just for this purpose. They're hoping to take some women back there. They managed to get 2 back there, which obviously isn't enough for all of them, but it turns out that one of these women isn't actually human. She's some kind of monster. We never fully find out what this girl's deal is, but clearly she wants to mate with a human, but she's not very good at communicating with human beings, and she gets confused and scared very easily, and when she does, she lashes out and kills. So it's not long before this motel room becomes an absolute bloodbath as the human characters and this murderous creature just completely misunderstand each other, and yeah, throats get torn, penises get ripped off, and all sorts of gnarly things happen. But this story is so rewatchable because when you watch it the second time, you suddenly realise that this girl slash creature, let's just call her the Siren, is in the background of a lot of the camcorder shots. You don't notice her the first time around, but second time you do, and it's quite creepy actually, just seeing her in the middle of all these clubbers looking directly at the camera. And then later on, she does some really weird poses. So one of them, after she's done a kill, she stands in the middle of the hotel room and just wraps her arms around herself like this and just stands there for about 5 minutes, like. And it's really bizarre and off-putting because she's not really in the light either. So you're just thinking, what the hell is she doing? What is she building up to here? And I guess the coup de grace of all this is when we suddenly realise that she can frigging fly. She sprouts wings like a pterodactyl and carries one of these guys off. It's the perfect end to the segment. And this whole story really repairs the damage caused by the 10 minutes of just awfulness that we had to put up with Tape 56. This is a really great story, and like I said, very rewatchable as well. As good as Amateur Night is, this one, Second Honeymoon, is my personal favourite of this collection. It's a nice contrast to the previous story. We've gone from the claustrophobic hotel room setting with blood flying everywhere to this really expansive desert landscape. So the story for this sees a young married couple called Sam and Stephanie going on a road trip across Nevada. It's all fun and games during the daytime when they're seeing the sights, but at night times odd things start to happen. A random woman comes to their door asking for a lift, and then the following night somebody actually breaks into their motel room, presumably the same woman, and you just know that something shocking is eventually going to happen, which it does, but nothing prepared me actually for what ultimately happens, which is that Stephanie is secretly in cahoots with this mysterious woman. They're both lesbian lovers seeing each other behind Sam's back, and they decide to off Sam. Now, this is a story which, for maximum enjoyment, really needs to be watched at least twice. I think the first time I watched this, I took note of the ending, thought to myself, wow, I didn't see that coming, and just moved on. But when I rewatched it, that was when I really saw just what a gem it is, because when you rewatch it, there are so many clues throughout the story as to what is going to happen. There's so much foreshadowing. At one point, Stephanie's using her camcorder to look into the window of a shop very early on, and she spots a knife which presumably is the same knife that's ultimately used to kill Sam. I don't know if Stephanie buys it when Sam's not looking or whether her partner buys it. There's another moment when Stephanie uses a fortune teller machine, and the message which comes out of the machine, I can't remember what the words of the message are, but I'm pretty sure it's a very clear reference to what will ultimately happen at the end of the story. It's saying that Stephanie's making a mistake by going with this psychopathic woman. It's there. I wish I could remember the exact words on the message, actually. There are also very clear hints that all is not right in Sam and Stephanie's marriage. She is very reluctant to have sex throughout the story. You can tell that Sam looks really frustrated. This is not what he had in mind for this trip, and it's sort of hinted, I think, that it's a kind of controlling marriage, and maybe that's why Stephanie has ended up going into the arms of somebody else. It might not just be because she fancies women. Sam mentions going to Vegas as a sort of detour on their holiday, but the way that he asks Stephanie if she wants to do that, it's sort of, he sort of asks it in a way that he presumes she will just agree with him, as if he calls the shots most of the time. There's a really odd moment where he basically accuses her of taking money out of his wallet. So it's sort of implied that he controls her money. He gives her a really weird stare at one point, just looks at her for like 4 or 5 seconds, and I could believe at that point that he's the one thinking of murder. But it's so clever, this story. There's so much about this couple that is just out of reach. There's information there about this marriage and the history of it, which we will never find out, but it's there. It's so well written. One interesting facet to it is that the woman who plays Stephanie, I randomly looked her up on Wiki, and it turns out it's the same woman who went on to direct Black Christmas. I can't stand that movie. So her name's Sophia Takal. I much prefer her as an actress to a director, although she's still very young. I think she's like 35, so I guess we'll just chalk Black Christmas up to a bad sort of early effort, and hopefully she'll get better. But yeah, to sum up my thoughts on this segment, I think Second Honeymoon is absolutely wonderful and the best story on this collection. Funnily enough, I thought this film had a little bit of a Friday the 13th feel to it, even before I knew what the title of it was. When you're watching VHS, you don't get to know the names of the stories as you're going along, like what I'm giving you with this review video. So this is about a group of kids who go camping and they run into this supernatural killer, this ghostly figure. Wikipedia refers to this thing as the glitch. And one of these girls has encountered this thing before, and the reason why she's bringing her friends back to this particular spot in the woods is because she wants to use them as bait so that the glitch will come out of hiding and then she can kill the glitch with all these traps that she's set up. I mean, when you think about it, it's absolute bullshit. If this thing hasn't followed you back to your hometown, why not just leave it there in the woods instead of risking your own life going back there? Unless she's just doing it to save the rest of the world from stumbling across this little bit of the woods, I don't know. Can we infer that she has gone back on her own and the glitch has not come out to get her? Is that the reason why she has to bring her friends? Because the glitch will only come out when there's a whole bunch of people? I don't know, unanswered questions, but this tale moves along at a good brisk pace. There's lots of good banter between the characters. The kills come thick and fast. There's a great skirmish between the heroine at the end and the glitch. It sort of reminds me of the finale to the first Predator film, and I think it's good that they made the killer supernatural for this segment. It contrasts nicely to the more human killer of the Second Honeymoon story. I think when you're putting together the order of stories for horror anthology, it's important to get that order spot on. It's a bit like putting together the track list for a music album. You know, for the people who are going to listen to the whole thing in one go, you've got to make the songs flow in a certain way from track to track. I think they got the order of stories in this original VHS absolutely spot on, and we are 3 for 3 at this point in terms of the main stories of this film. Amateur Night, Second Honeymoon, Tuesday the 17th, all excellent. Unfortunately, we now get a weak one. It even has a pretty piss-poor, lazy title. This is by far the weakest of the 5 main stories. I would still say it's better than Tape 56, but that's not saying much. So in this one, there's a doctor who's helping aliens put baby aliens into his many girlfriends that he seems to have. He likes to talk to them over Zoom and get his rocks off by making them strip. Nothing really happens in this story. There's no resolution to it. We find out what's happening, and that is the story ultimately. It's just not very good. I think this one could have been cut. I mean, this film has 5 stories. Most of the sequels have 3 or 4, and the runtime of the original VHS is about an hour 57, I think. I think this particular segment is about 10-15 minutes. I think they could have cut this one, and the movie still would have been about an hour 40. Maybe this one could have been left for the extras, you know, buy the special edition, get a bonus story which didn't quite make the cut. A bit harsh on the director and the actors maybe, but, you know, c'est la vie, that's just life. Whenever I come to this one, when I'm watching this film, I do have that dilemma. Do I just skip past this one, or shall I watch it for the 2 women who get naked? And ultimately, I do usually stick around. But yeah, it's not a great one, it has to be said. But luckily, we've got one more story to come, and it does give this chance to really finish with a bang. This tale has a few similarities with Amateur Night, so with this movie opening with Amateur Night and finishing with this one, it kind of feels like the whole thing is coming full circle. Again, we have a group of guys going on a night out, except in this case, they're not going to a nightclub, they're going to a fancy dress party at somebody's house, but when they get there, the whole place is abandoned. It's a very large house. It's got like 3-4 floors, something like that. So after exploring this empty house for a little while, they go up to the attic and find some kind of cult ritual in progress. There's a woman tied up with ropes and all these guys coming out with these incantations and stuff. Now, the minute that we see this, I was thinking to myself, oh shit, just run, 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 run. But of course, these dopehead characters think that this is all part of the fancy dress night, and so they hang around having laughs and giggles at the whole thing. So for the briefest few seconds, I thought this story was going to be a case of the good guys trying to get out and the cult members chasing after them, a kind of 4-on-4 battle sort of thing. But then we get another great twist. It turns out that the devil himself, or one of his disciples, is observing this ritual, and he's not best pleased by the fact that it's been interrupted. He seems to blame the cult members and starts whisking them away to hell in a few moments of utter craziness. Some really good effects where these guys are just pulled away into the rafters and stuff. And then whatever this higher power is, it doesn't want the good guys to live either. It essentially decides no witnesses to what's gone on tonight. For some reason, though, the higher power cannot just whisk away the good guys as well. It has to sort of make the house implode on itself. So we get this amazing moment where the characters are going down the stairs and the walls are closing in, the windows are shutting down, cutlery's flying everywhere, arms are coming through the walls. It's absolute edge of your seat stuff. The special effects are absolutely seamless. It's just incredible stuff. I really, really liked it. And then we get the twist that the girl is not what she seems. So again, similar to Amateur Night. Now, I don't know if the girl was evil all along, and that's why these cult members were trying to cure her somehow, like those characters in The Conjuring maybe. Or maybe she was human all along and those were just really bad people, and the devil or the higher power or whatever just invades her body only when everybody's in the car, just to try and get to the good characters. So maybe she only turns bad right at the end. I don't know. Again, unanswered questions. There are a lot of unanswered questions in these stories, but the finale to this with the car on the train tracks is just the perfect way to end this compilation. I'm so glad that we don't cut back to the arseholes for one final moment with them in that pointless section, take 56. So yeah, there we have it. This story is a great way to finish things off. It's time for the conclusion. So on the whole, we have 4 really good stories, 1 really mediocre one, a terrible wraparound, but that's really good in terms of a set of results, because when it comes to any horror anthology, you're usually really lucky if you get 2 or 3 stories that you really like. The fact that there are 4 in this is really good. In fact, I would say that this is definitely one of my favourite horror anthologies that I have ever seen. I think we're going to struggle to come across a better one in this series, although some of them I have not seen for quite some time. But for now, let's get to the bag of terror and find out what sort of score I'm going to give to this overall set of stories. Got 1, 2, 3, 4 bloody axes out of 5 for the original VHS from 2012. You could look at that in a couple of ways. So you could look at it as 1 axe per really good story, or you could look at it another way and say that I've taken off half an axe for the dodgy story about the Doctor and the aliens, and I've taken off another half an axe for the really crap wraparound. So look at it as you will, but this is a really, really top-notch horror anthology. Highly recommended. I'll be back soon with a review for VHS 2. Until next time, cheerio.